Good, yeah. All right, we're all ready to get started for interview training. We're super excited. Can you guys hear me? Callers?
Yes, we hear you. Good morning.
All right, great. Good morning. So we're all ready to get started. We're super excited. I'm Lisa Schumacher, and I have Mike Cordero here, and we're super excited to train you guys on how to interview new candidates coming into the company. And we've been working really hard on this presentation and this training for you. Mike and I, over the last few weeks, have been kind of arguing on what's most important for this training class, and what's resonated to me is that really all of this is important. And the reason why it's all of this is important is because people are our most valuable asset when it comes to the strategy of the company. So as we look at 2017 and the strategy for the company, who we bring into the company is most important. So as we go through, if you have any questions, just let me know. So what we're going to go through and what you're going to learn throughout the course of this training is why interviewing is important and how to provide a good candidate experience. So I don't know if you guys noticed when you walked into the building today, but people aren't lining up to come to Vology. They're not knocking on the door to interview here. They have other choices. The market in Tampa is extremely competitive, the technology market here. So providing a good experience, a good candidate experience is something that we're going to spend a lot of time on today. Recognizing legal issues when it comes to interviewing, what you can ask and what you need to be careful talking about during the interview, and how to prevent discrimination when we're hiring and when we're looking at candidates. Different types of interviews and different styles of interviews, how we can test their personality and their behavior styles. Interview guides, if you're new to interviewing, we can provide you with an interview guide that you can follow and help the communication flow a little bit easier. How to conduct a successful interview so the candidate walks away feeling really good about themselves and really good about the company. How to look at the resume and develop questions off of the resume. And then the recruiting process. A lot of you don't know what actually goes into the recruiting process. So I know that you call us and you say, you know, I need a sales guy immediately. But what does that process look like? What happens after you interview them and you say, I want to hire that person? So what comes next? And then how to close the interview. So you like the person, but you don't like the person, how to actually tell them, like, you're not really a good fit, or maybe they're a good fit for the company but not really a good fit for the role. How to tell them that and how to provide them with that feedback. So why do we interview people? Why do we bring them on site versus just hiring them off of the phone? What are you trying to get from somebody when you bring them in and meet them face to face? You're going to assess their strengths, their weaknesses, and why are they suitable for the job. Are they a good fit with your existing team and the company? Mike and I come from a company where we brought candidates in and they spent an entire day with the team and they shadowed the team. So that might be something that we can look at, or you guys can provide input on that. It allows the candidate, you have to remember that the candidate is interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. So you need to be prepared for them to be asking questions. Sometimes we find that the candidate knows somebody here, or the team might know the candidate from another location. So allowing them to observe our environment and the team that they're in, we can find a lot out from them. Again, it allows them to see if they're a fit for the team. Some people that are coming from very large organizations where maybe they had an office, if you let them see our environment and they see that they're going to be maybe in a cubicle, potentially might not be a fit. So everything that we screened over the phone, we might have missed that. So you want to make sure that they get a full exposure to where they're going to be. And again, it allows them to see if it's going to match their career goals. So somebody that's come up through their career and they're aspiring to be a manager, we might not have that opportunity available for them. So you really want to dive in and see if they're going to be a fit for that.
So this is probably, and we'll go into it on the next slide, you know, ways that we can improve it. But for me, this is probably the thing that I consider to be most important. Lisa touched on it, right? The IT market in Tampa, specifically IT, is extremely competitive. It's virtually no unemployment. But if you look at sales, for example, it's just as tough, right? Candidates are evaluating multiple opportunities, and that's something that we always have to remain cognizant of when we're speaking to them and figuring out where those opportunities stand in the process, stack ranking them, what they like, what they don't like. A couple stats that Lisa put on this were 34% of candidates say that their experience during the hiring process strongly affected their decision to accept the job. We live and breathe this on a daily basis, right? Because we're getting the feedback from them, we're getting more in-depth conversations with them about what they liked, what they didn't like, you know, how the conversations went. It's really up to us to decide, you know, what side of that stat we want to be on, right? Do we want 34% of people saying, hey, this really pushed me to take the job of Ology? Or is it going to be, hey, the manager I spoke with or who I interviewed with was disengaged, was kind of rude, was short, I didn't really get a good feel for the team, I'm going to hold off on accepting the opportunity. 78% of candidates say they will talk about a bad hiring experience with their friends and family. This is kind of common knowledge, right? It's like the same theory as if you go out to a restaurant, right, and you have bad service or the food is terrible, you're going to be more apt to tell a lot of people about that than you are if you go to a restaurant and have a good experience, right? You're not going to tell as many people about that. So that's just something to take in effect of how we're getting our name out there in the community. And then 17% of candidates say they will share their negative experiences on social media. I don't think it's a secret to anyone about some of the Glassdoor reviews that we've had. I mean, that can be considered a form of social media. People are going on there. There's interview categories in Glassdoor to where people can go in and specifically just rate the interview experience versus the company. So it doesn't even be people that hire.
Yeah, there's a category on Glassdoor, and it's not for current employees, but it's for people that have interviewed, and it's just to share their experience, either positive or negative. So just like people are doing their due diligence on the front end after they've talked to Mike and I regarding the opportunity, they're going around to their friends and family or their previous coworkers, hey, have you heard of Ology? I just got a call from a random recruiter, you know, asking if I'd be interested in this opportunity. They're doing it on the back end after they've interviewed here. So we got to make sure, like Mike said, this is our most passionate area is candidate experience because they are in the community, and Tampa is a lot smaller than you think it is, you know. So the person that is leaving here is going to talk to the community and the next person that we're getting ready to go call for an opportunity.
Yep. So I think it's just important that, and we'll stress it again on the next slide, but you know, we're selling these candidates on the job, right? When we're talking to them, it's not
the job and the company.
Yeah, it's not just, you know, hey, tell me about your experiences. Like, we interview them, we screen them, but we leave a lot more of, like, the granular questions up to the hiring manager, right? For us, it's figuring out, for me at least, it's figuring out logistics, right? Does it make sense for them? Does it align with where their career wants to go? All the above. And once that stuff falls in line, it's 20 minutes of nonstop selling them on how great Ology is and all the things you could do here and the culture and the opportunity. And if they come in and have a bad experience, then that makes it like 10 times worse. And we look like liars.
All right, so to piggyback off of that, how do we show them a great experience? It starts from us You know, it starts from Mike and I. We set appointments with them for their phone screen, so we make sure that we call them on the nose. It's not 15 minutes after 10 o'clock. If we schedule it for 10 o'clock, we make sure that we call them at 10 o'clock. Their time is just as valuable as ours. So when we schedule an interview for you all, show up on time. These people are taking time off work, a PTO day a lot of times. They have children just like we do. They have jobs, you know, so it's extremely important to show up on time. They're sitting in these meeting rooms with glass all around them. You know, we don't want to leave them hanging out in there. It's very difficult for Mike and I to also schedule these interviews. It's almost like putting together a puzzle. Mike's in the middle of scheduling nightmare right now, but it's really, really difficult. So if you don't show up on time, that also leaves you less time to interview them, and then potentially the next person that's coming in behind you to interview that candidate is going to screw up their schedule. So show up on time. Don't cancel interviews at the last minute, whatever you have to do. Cancel whatever's going on that is interrupting the interview. Canceling an interview is probably the worst thing that you could possibly do. Again, the person that you're interviewing is taking time out of their day. A lot of times it is a day off work, which, you know, think about yourself, put yourself in their shoes. They have to take PTO time for vacations, family vacations, doctor's appointments, other human things. So don't cancel an interview at the last minute. If you have an emergency come up, reach out to us or maybe put somebody in your place, do something, but don't cancel the interview. When you walk into the interview, a lot of times we tee this up for the candidate. We let the candidate know who they're going to be interviewing with, and we let them know what their role is and with the company, but explain it yourself. A lot of times when I talk to the candidate, I let them know how I joined the company, what my role is, and how my function relates to what they're going to be doing if hypothetically we were going to offer them the job. It helps just kind of put it into perspective. So introduce yourself and how you're connected to the role they're interviewing with. Introduce them to the team that they're going to be working with. Sometimes they're going to, unbeknownst to them, they know somebody. You never know. And that sometimes after the interview, that person that you interview them with might have some feedback for you that you didn't know about. So it's really good, and it helps with cultural fit. You'll immediately know good rapport immediately, you know, see how they interact with your team. Hey, good to meet you. You know, how was your week on? What do you think of Ology? Is the location good for you? You know what I mean? Like, you'll see if there's a good rapport, good connection if you bring them around to your team and let them introduce each other. Give them your full attention. This is one of my big pet peeves. Don't bring your cell phone in there. Again, we have windows in all the meeting rooms, and sometimes I'll walk by and the person that's doing the interviewing will look up and wave at me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not the one that you should be focusing on. So give them your full attention. Let them know that you are engaged. Again, and also, if you're bringing your computer, your laptop in there, if you're one that doesn't take written notes, let them know why your laptop is open. Say, you know, when you introduce yourself, say, hey, you know, I take notes on my laptop, and that's why I brought it in here. Just, you know, give them your full attention and let them know why your laptop's in there. The job preview. Nobody knows the job better than the person that's interviewing the candidate, than the hiring manager. So walk them through what the day-to-day expectations are going to be. We give them the day-to-day a little bit, but we're recruiters. I am not an engineer. I'm not a sales rep. So we can only give them a snapshot of what we think the day-to-day is going to be, but nobody can give them the day-to-day better than the hiring manager. So walk them through what the expectations are going to be. You might talk them out of it right then and there.
That's what I was going to say, like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
You want to give them the full scope of it, especially like Jen for salespeople, right? We paint this picture, you can make so much money here, you can do all this stuff, you can sell everything under the sun. It's all great, those are all good selling points. But here's the deal, you're going to face 100 no's a day. Here's the amount of calls that you're going to make. Here's it takes about a year to ramp up and actually get going to where you even start seeing moderate success, right? So all of those things need to be laid down on the front end. This way, we don't
almost talk them out of it. Yeah, and let them come back with why they're a good fit for it. And also, kind of watch the clock a little bit. Make sure they're coming prepared with questions. Remember that they've talked to friends and family. They're nervous. They've prepared for this interview. We've prepped them for the interview. We've told them before they come in. That's our job as a recruiter. Hey, John, make sure you come prepared with questions. Make sure you look at the job description. Make sure that you're prepared to ask Jen some really great questions. So make sure you log for like 15 minutes of good questions. Follow the schedule. This comes back to don't be late. You know, if you don't follow the schedule, the next person that's coming in right after you, that's going to screw up their schedule. So if you don't follow the schedule, it's going to offer a lot of problems. The drink in the bathroom breaks, we added this because some interviews are an all-day agenda. Some of them are going to be here for 6 hours. If you're in the middle, offer them a little bit of a break. We have waters here. Leanna has waters. Ask them if they need to go. Make them feel comfortable. You know, we don't do panel interviews because it's weird. So they're not, you know, they're not going to be stressed out or anything. So make it feel as comfortable and as casual as possible. Offer them a drink. Offer them a bathroom break. Leanna does a great job of that when they get here. But if they're going to be here for a long period of time, make sure that they feel comfortable enough to get up, stretch their legs, and go get something to drink.
One thing I did want to touch on that she explained was explain your connection to the role. So a lot of times when I'll notice when people start interviewing, right, it's choppy at the beginning, right, because you don't necessarily know how to get into it. And a lot of times it'll start by, so tell me about yourself, or tell me about your background, or how did you hear about biology, and all that stuff's great, and it'll come out in the interview. What helps me a lot is I tell people my story, and I tell them exactly how I got involved with biology and, you know, my time here, how it's progressed, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what my day-to-day responsibilities are, and all that. This way the person, you put them at ease. They're more comfortable with you. They feel like, you know, they have some sort of connection to you a little bit, and then that allows you to kind of ease into the rest of the interview.
It makes them feel more comfortable. Remember, they're nervous. You know, they thought about it the night before. They had their outfit laid out. They talked to people. They're nervous. So to make them feel more comfortable, talk about yourself a little bit, and then you can ask questions related to that. Well, how did you get to your last job, type of thing. When you're interviewing somebody, you're only getting 10% from that on-site interview. So which means you really got to dig to get that other 90%. 90% of a person's potential is below the surface. Their behavior, their learning style, their interests, which means that you've got to ask the right questions. And a lot of people, a lot of hiring managers don't really know how to ask the right questions. So we're going to dive really into that, the situational, the behavior, the technical vetting, and how we can get examples of their work during the interview.
We will touch on it too. I'll cover predictive index. It's one of the assessments that we use. But to that point, like 90% of a person's potential is below the surface. I just went through a predictive index training to get certified in how to read it and everything like that. And they brought up a ton of good points that depending on the way a person is, some people are just really extroverted and some people are really competitive and dominant and all this stuff that allows them to kind of come to the table in those situations and interview really well.
Some people can nail the interview.
And then
you'll find, especially in sales, you know, they can sell you. I'm not good at recruiting salespeople because I get sold. So some people can nail the interview, but they can't do the job. And this is how we're going to figure out if they can do the job. Does anybody know what an example of a situational interview question is? I cheated. Yeah, so a situational interview question think of it like this. It begins with like a how. How would you approach this, right? So how would you handle a customer that isn't happy with something? So make them, how would you handle a customer that isn't happy with your service, and really dive into that question. A behavioral, you guys have the answers right in front of you. A behavioral is tell me about a time. So behavioral is in the past. You want them to think about a time, and what you're listening for in the answer is you're listening for like names or very specific examples. That's how you're going to cut out the BS, is very, very specific examples. So the candidate is telling you about this networking activity. Listen to how they found out about that networking activity. Were they part of a team? Were they on the board of TBTF? And that's how they got into the networking activity. And what did that new customer, what kind of revenue did that customer bring into Vology or the previous company?
You have to be curious, right?
Right.
So you can't ever take somebody's stock answer. You can't ask a situational question, hey, how'd you handle this if this happened, and someone gives you an answer, and you're just like, oh, okay. You want to learn a little bit more of like what's going through their head. You want to try to get to more raw answers. Lisa said it. So situational covers the future. Behavioral covers the past. Hey, how have you acted in past situations? What have you done here? Situational, how would you hypothetically handle this? And the reason I say hypothetically is that's how I cut through the BS, is I put everything in hypotheticals. So if this really happened and you were on site at this customer and blah, blah, and I'll put names in there and everything like that to make the situation a little bit more real, you tend to get people thinking a little bit more and off their feet, and it's not a question that they may be prepared for. So that's just something that I do, and I also would say that you base these questions off someone's resume. So you don't want to have stock questions that you ask every single candidate every single time. You want to be able to look at their experience, and maybe if they were in a customer service role, or maybe if they were in certain sales roles or engineering roles and stuff like that, and try and think about it and come up with questions that have actually happened to them or will be happening to them.
Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Technical is assessing their skill set. So like Mike said, you're basing this off of their resume. You're not going to have, every hiring manager is not going to have the same question. So an example is, walk me through. You're not going to ask the question based off of the job title, product manager. Tell me how you manage products. No. You want to be very, very specific. Walk me through the Microsoft Exchange implementations that you have performed. And then, after they answer, get more specific, get more granular. Were you part of the team? Did you lead it, or did somebody else lead it? Did you outsource it? What part of that implementation were you actually doing?
How big was the environment? What did the day-to-day look like when you were implementing it, right? What other technologies did you bring into it? So it's not just, hey, talk to me about your Exchange experience. Yeah.
Yeah, very detailed. All right, so this is super important, and this is going to be a big push for 2017. Is actually having the candidate produce the work. So going back to 90% of the candidate is below the surface, you can only get so much out of the interview. Some people are really, really great at interviewing, and you walk away and you're like, I love that person. You love the person. You could hang out with them, you can go to lunch with them, and they're great, but can they actually do the job? And there's no better way to find out if they can do the job than actually having them do the job. So there's a lot of ways that we can assess the candidate. And one of our favorite ways in VPOP to assess somebody is having them do a project. When we were hiring for Katie's role, when she was interviewing for coordinator, people operations coordinator, we had her do a project. She was interviewing against other candidates, and at the time, we didn't have a newsletter. So Katie, and along with other candidates, had to produce a newsletter, and we tested her creativity as well as her being able to take the content that we had given her and put it into a newsletter. We're hiring right now in accounting, and Ellie is putting together an accounting project to test their accounting skills. So that's one example of projects as part of the interview process. And again, if they can produce the work, then they can probably do the job. Resumes are great, but companies can write resumes. You know, that's really not. That's not really not a great way. The next is technical.
I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
So, like, my mentors want to be involved. They want to know the people before they're mentoring them.
Yeah.
So would it maybe be a good idea for a project like that for them to call the mentors and try to sell the mentors? Is that?
So, yeah, so we did that last
100%.
year. Yeah, to Mike's point, absolutely. We did that last year. We did role plays. And we had the customer or the candidate actually come into the building and sell. It was more of a field sales project. But we can do that for inside sales as well. It would be like a role play.
And here's the only thing I would say with that, right? So if that's going to be the case and we do it, I would say let's figure out for that one specifically, like figure out if it's something that we'll do as a part of all of them. This way we can make it something that we assess everybody on versus like being in the middle of an interview and the candidate not expecting it and saying like, hey, we're going to do a role play right now.
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like a follow-up afterwards. They could do it and like.
No, we would want it to be part of the interview process, and it would have to be the same for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that would be, so if Doug DeRue is mentoring somebody, right?
Right.
Then if that candidate's going to be brought onto his team, he's going to be responsible for mentoring him. He's probably going to want to know if they have what it takes. That could be part of what they have to call into Doug DeRue and they have to sell him on something, or they have to maybe just pitch him the Vology elevator pitch or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that day they would do it. Okay.
Yeah.
They could do it that day, they could do it the day after, as long as there's not a ton of time that goes in between it.
Yeah.
Just because, again, it's a moving market, so the longer we stretch it out, the more at risk we are of losing the candidate. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
And then the same as the project, we have technical assessments. In the past, we used a tool called Prove It, but we do have the capabilities to reach out to different partners and create different technical assessments. The engineering team can create technical assessments based on the role that we're hiring for. I would just say work with, the talent acquisition team on creating those assessments. Currently, we don't have a lot of tools in place for technical assessments, but we're open to using different ones. Predictive index is something that we use to assess the candidate today. We used it for the entire year of 2016. We used it internally in our talent acquisition team. And for the sales team, Kevin Shaw is PI certified, so he's able to read the assessments and take them into consideration when choosing candidates. Mike Cordero just got PI certified. We have an example here. Oh no, it won't come up.
It won't come up?
Oh.
So I was the biggest, predictive index when we were first using it or whatever. I didn't really believe in, cognitive or behavioral-based assessments. But after going to the training and getting certified, it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome, especially for roles that are at complete ends of the spectrum, right? So like a sales role versus somebody that would be maybe like a developer or heads down data analytics. You can really get an idea of how they're going to behave in that certain environment. And we brought it up when we were at the training of people that have taken it at Vology. And I was able to, after I figured out how to read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I've heard it.
Groovy music on.
Is it not coming up?
It's not me. No. It's not coming up. So the predictive index For some reason, it's not coming up. So, but that's okay. We're gonna attach all candidates' PIs to the calendar invite when you interview. So we can go over those individually.
And here's the deal, right? Whether it comes up or not, even if it comes up, it's not
Muted.
So what you're able to see is it shows you how a person will behave in certain situations, right? So mine, for example, shows that I'm competitive, a little bit more on the dominant side. I like to engage in those types of conversations. I can get pushback and stuff like that. But oddly enough, I'm actually more on the introverted side than I am extroverted, right? So I'm not one of those people that gains energy off being around other people. I can kind of turn it on and off when I want to, right? It also shows that I need variety. If I'm in a too structured of an environment, I'll freak out, which is so true. Mm-hmm. Like I need to be doing different things all the time. I can't sit down at my desk for more than 5 minutes and sit there and like type things out. It's just not my strength. So for someone in sales, for example, you want someone that is going to be more on the competitive and dominant side, that's okay with kind of getting out there and putting themselves out there, but also probably a little bit more on the extroverted side. Yeah. You also want somebody that, you know, is kind of the same there, free from structure and stuff like that, somebody that's all right with doing different things on a daily basis. They're always engaging in different opportunities. On the flip side of that, if you look at someone that is heads down, more in data analytics or even like an accounting and finance role, for example, you need someone that is okay with doing repetitive tasks, and they're great with it, and that's what they want to do. They want to walk in every single day and know that they have to do A, B, C, and D, and that is their entire day. Someone that's good with following rules and good with compliance and things of that nature. That's all things that this assessment can give you insight into. The cool thing, too, that they showed us, and we've actually used this before, you can build what's called like a pro. So for sales, we have one, right? And it shows the exact pattern of what an ideal salesperson would look like. Now, there's always one-offs, right? But you can do it for any role, anything. You can build a pro to show what that pattern looks like.
So what a pro is we're hiring right now for a business partner. So our entire team did the predictive index assessment as to what we felt the role should require, all the behaviors that the role should require. And that built an analysis. And I'm so sorry that this isn't coming up on the screen right now. I'm really disappointed. But anyway, it comes up with a pattern that we felt that the role, you know, the behaviors that the role should require. And then when our candidates take the assessment, we compare their pattern and their behaviors to that of the role. Now, we don't use the PI as we don't use it as a means of hiring. Like, we don't determine that for hiring, but we do take it into serious consideration because how they behave in like their real life and in their previous roles is probably how they're going to behave here at Vology. So, you know, if we want somebody that's very task-oriented and very analytical in, say, like in a BI role, but their PI comes back and they're very flamboyant and people person, and, you know, they don't like to follow checklists.
They're never going to work out.
They're never going to work out in an analytics role, you know. So we do take it into consideration when we're looking at our candidates. And again, it's just a way to looking at one's actual work.
It's just data points, right? All of this up here, a project, the technical assessment, the actual interview, the references, the predictive index. All this stuff is data points for us to get below that 90%, right? Aside from the 10% of what we got from the interview, we want to get more from those people. So it's another way for us to get deeper insight into how they may or may not react to certain roles.
Right. So we also collect references, but everybody knows you're not going to list a reference that's going to give you a bad reference. So that's probably 2% of the interview process. All right, so closing the interview. So sometimes it's a little awkward. You're sitting there, and for sales, you want the candidate to say, "Did I get the job?" That's a great close. But for you, how do you close it? How do you provide them with the next steps? So you want to kind of sum it up, you know, like provide them the job description once again, and then open it up for questions. A lot of times I'll close it by, hey, after everybody that you've talked to, is this something that you're still interested in? And what kind of questions do you have for me now that you've met with, you know, so-and-so? And then provide them with next steps. Always leave it to talent acquisition. That's your next step. Hey, Mike or Lisa is going to get back to you. We have a few more interviews later on this week, and then talent acquisition will be in contact with you. Never, ever, ever make promises you can't keep. Never close the interview by saying, hey, you nailed it, I think you're going to get the job. You never know what can happen. You know, we might have,
Please don't do that.
Yeah, please don't do that.
It makes it so hard.
It makes it really hard. Or, you know, you can give them some candid feedback, like, you know, you kind of fell short here, this is a gap here, but you're really strong here, and, you know, we have a few more interviews, and talent acquisition will get back to you. A lot of hiring managers do provide immediate feedback to the candidate, and that's okay. You just kind of got to be a little bit careful because, again, candidates only hear what they want to hear, and sometimes they hear, oh, I got the job, you know. So I would keep it very, very short with thank you for your time. I know your time is valuable. I hope that we made a good impression on you. I know that you're interviewing other places. Talent acquisition will be in contact with you soon. And then the biggest thing, if you don't walk away with anything here, take notes. Take notes on their behavior. If the candidate, you know, pulled out their cell phone, or if their cell phone rang, jot that down somewhere. Take notes on all their technical skills. Take notes on where they fell short. Take notes on pros, cons, areas of concern. You can even write a little yes, you know, that you love them. And then send all your feedback to us immediately. Go back to your desk, send it over to us immediately. A lot of times we're scheduling candidate feedback sessions for a week later because we want to talk about all the candidates at once. And the last thing that we want to happen is that you forgot about this candidate. You know, then the candidate's at a severe disadvantage because you know nothing about them, and we have to, you know, go off of other people's notes. So take notes immediately on all the, you know, the necessary information that you gathered from the interview.
So yeah, take notes. That's extremely important. One thing that I wanted to touch on though as well is the promises you can't keep thing. Like early on in my career, I got in a ton of trouble for this because I used to just tell everyone like, hey, you're great, you're gonna.
You feel bad.
Blah, blah, blah. It's awkward. You don't really know how to get out of it. You feel bad the person's taking their time. Maybe right out of the gate you kind of assess that they're not a fit. One thing that I learned to do is I am just extremely candid with the candidate, and I'll say, hey, really enjoyed the conversation. I think these are the aspects that you probably do great in the job. Here's my concerns. And I'll address in a nice way my concerns. And I'll usually put it on something like, you know, hey, this job involves a lot of this, and you haven't done that in the past, so my concern is you might not be content in doing that sort of role. Or align it to what their career goals are, right? You said you want to be in this role. This isn't going to get you there. So I'm just nervous that it's not providing the right career path for you, blah, blah, blah. And a good amount of times candidates will come back to me and provide the reasons as to, they'll address the concerns.
Yeah.
Which can either strengthen my opinion on them or kind of just keep it the same. Right?
Again, kind of talking them out of it, you know. During this interview process, I heard that, you know, you like to be in a air-conditioned warehouse. We don't have an air-conditioned warehouse, you know, so how do you feel about that? You know, just kind of talking them out of it and let them come back and, like, to Mike's point, addressing those areas of concern and proving why they're a good fit.
You just want to be honest. I mean, here's the deal. Everything that we're trying to show you to do is to get down to as much of the raw candidate as you can, not the fluffed up interview style candidate and everything like that. And I think addressing the concerns on the front end, being honest with them about your thoughts on everything, don't tell them they have a job or anything like that. Don't tell them that, you know, you're great, you're going to hear back at 5 o'clock today. None of that stuff is good to do. You just want to be honest, you want to be open, and you'll I think, get a better experience for yourself with a candidate.
All right. This is super exciting.
Mike.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Jen. I just want to, this is great, by the way, I'm loving this. I want to just add something to what you guys said about taking notes and just how important it is to remember and, you know, kind of summarizing pros, cons, blah, blah, blah. One thing I like to ask myself after I interview a candidate is, what's my biggest red flag about this candidate? Like, what am I most concerned about? You know, what is just, even if it's the lightest thing, what, you know, what's my biggest thing, and write it down, because a lot of times in my experience hiring people, what ends up being the reason that person doesn't work out or wasn't a fit, or, oh my gosh, I wish I paid more attention to myself, is that thing, you know. And I can think of examples, like I won't name a name, but in one example, I hired someone who was going to be responsible for training, and one of the things, I was so impressed with this person's interview skills, their presentation skills, their actual training. They did a project as an interview. It was a training to a full classroom. The person nailed it. But one thing that was my biggest red flag was this person's project management skills. You know, can they do a step-by-step ownership of developing something from scratch and seeing it all the way to the end? And that was my biggest red flag. And in the end, this person didn't work out, and that was the thing. That was the reason they didn't work out. So I just want to kind of put it out. You guys are giving so many good tips. I love it. I would encourage the room to give their tips. That's one of my tips that I wanted to share with the room, because that's just one example, but pretty much in every scenario that I can think of when I've hired someone, if I think back about what that one little red flag was, it's usually that thing that's the biggest issue. And sometimes it's okay and it's manageable, but sometimes, you know, it ends up not working out.
That's a good point, John. And another thing about taking notes is sometimes one interviewer is gathering information or a red flag that another interviewer didn't gather. And we discover that during the candidate feedback session. Mike just experienced that yesterday, and we eliminated a candidate because of that. The candidate told one hiring manager one thing and then another hiring manager another thing. So that's another, you know, reason why we take notes, because we discover things in one meeting that is not discovered in another meeting.
And here's the deal, Jen, thank you for bringing that up. Trust your gut, right? Don't ever sell yourself on the candidate because, one, you need to fill the role or, you know, whatever. Like, just trust your gut. I would so much rather screen 50 candidates for you and put, you know, however many candidates you want through the process and everything like that until we get the right person. Because, one, if they don't work out, it's so much worse on the back end, right? And we can talk about some of the figures of what bad hires look like, nutrition and all that stuff. But trust your gut, and she's absolutely right. It's happened to me 1,000 times. I mean, when I knew something was wrong, I knew it, I could sense it. It's just something didn't feel right. Maybe I couldn't put my finger on it, and then as soon as that thing went wrong, I'm like, all right, well, called that one from the start. So, good point.
All right, guys. This is some serious topics that we have to go over. It's basically the legal mumble jumble. So when you're interviewing candidates, there's some things that you need to be very, very careful about. And what I tell my hiring managers is just don't veer off track. Keep it simple, you know. Stick to the interview guide, and if the candidate veers off, you don't veer off. So Title VII is basically so Vology is going to hire without regards to any of these. So Title VII is the Civil Rights Act. So we're not going to base our decisions off of sex, race, religion, any of those. The Equal Pay Act is based on gender. We're not going to discriminate based on gender. Regardless of their gender, we're going to pay everybody equal pay. The Americans with, or the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, I'm trying to follow along here, is treating people less favorably because of their age. This protects people over the age of 40. So just be careful when you're interviewing individuals that are over the age of 40. Although you can't really ask them, you know, how old they are.
You can't be careful or not. Treat everybody the same.
Treat everybody the same as basically
too young.
Yeah, treat everybody exactly the same. The Americans with Disability Act is prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. So this is something that I had to kind of deal with in my previous career. You know, somebody comes in with a wheelchair, and we don't screen against us when we're on the phone interview with somebody, but questions that you can ask around this. You know, if somebody wheels up in a wheelchair and you're interviewing them, perfectly fine. You know, you can ask a question like, are you able to perform this job with or without accommodations? Very simple, and it really doesn't relate to Devology because we're not climbing ladders. Warehouse, yes, but in this building, not too much. The GINA Act of 2008, this is a little bit newer for me. I'll have to be honest, I had to look it up because I'm a little bit, this is a new law for me. You cannot discriminate someone based on their genetic history. So basically their health history. So yeah, so if somebody brings it up, maybe in conversation, like you know, a family member of theirs died of breast cancer or something like that, we can't discriminate against them. So does anybody have any questions on that? It's really, really simple. Everybody can file a claim. Everybody. It happens all the time. Every single company that I've ever worked at has received a lawsuit of some sort based on these discriminations. It happens all the time, more often than you think. You don't hear about it because you're in the back office, but it happens all the time. And the cost of claims are extreme. I should have put a data point here, but they are a lot. Basically, if somebody files a claim, a lot of times we have to give them the job. We have to give them back pay, monetary loss, attorney fees we have to pay for, court costs. It's very, very, very expensive. So the bottom line is just be very, very careful about, you know, the questions that you're asking, how you're forming the questions, what you're talking about. Be very cognizant of these laws. These are some examples. Again, avoid asking some questions regarding, related to the protected areas. Don't talk to the candidates about any of their personal issues or their personal life. Keep it related to their experience, their skills, their resume. Just base it right off of their resume. Sometimes you might have to reframe the question. I've been in interviews before where the candidate gave me information that I did not need, so I reframed that. I mean, people sometimes get a little too comfortable with you, and they give up information that you don't need. Don't continue the conversation. Reroute it. Change the conversation up. If they start giving, I mean, I could give you examples all day long. I've been in this role for a very, very long time. But some examples are, what are your child care arrangements? You can't assume that they have children that, you know, aren't cared for. So keep it related to the shift. Again, you're giving them a realistic job preview, so let them know what hours they're going to have to work. Our NOC is 24/7. Ask them if they're able to work 24/7 or if they can only work day shift. Religious holidays, do they celebrate? Again, our knock is 24/7. Ask them if they're able to work on the weekends or can they only work Monday through Friday. Just make sure that you're framing the question up correctly so that way you're avoiding any lawsuits.
Err on the side of caution. Well, that's the only thing. I mean, in all reality, that's all you can do. Just err on the side of caution. Put yourself in their shoes. What questions would you be uncomfortable if you were asked, right? Anything about your spouse or children or significant other or...
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How would you recommend assessing cultural fit with someone without getting too personal with them?
That's where I think that you, so you bring other people into the equation, I think, right? So if you can have them sit with multiple members of the team or, you know, even if it's just quick 30-minute conversations or stuff like that, have them shadow them at their desk. You can have multiple people assess if it's a cultural fit.
Yeah.
I would say so John Madaska said something to me the other day that stuck with me, right? So we're interviewing director of sales candidates, and we've had a lot of people in the process. And John said something to me. He's like, you know what I've learned through all this, or through my years working, is like I used to hire the rock stars, right? The people that had their resumes, they worked at the Fortune 500 companies, all these great places. They've done this, that, and the other thing, and more often than not, those people end up coming in and they're miserable to work with. So what I've started doing is I've started just really figuring out if I could sit next to this person for 8 hours a day. Can I go out and can I grab a drink with this person? Can I have lunch with this person? Would I enjoy spending time with that person? And if you keep that in front of mind, that's kind of how you screen for it. I know within 2 minutes of talking to someone if they could potentially be a cultural fit for the organization. I think it's more of a...
Well, and I think also diving into the culture that they're coming from, you know. I've learned that people from large organizations that aren't used to being under the pressure, that haven't been through a lot of change in their organization, that are used to kind of flying under the radar and not under the gun and in the spotlight, they don't fit in well at Vology. So kind of diving in from where they come from versus where they're coming to will really assess if they're going to be able to fit into our culture. And I talk to them about that, and I've actually talked people out of it. Like, hey, we've been through this before, and we recognize that, you know, you're coming from Citibank, and, you know, they're a very large, Accenture, you know, large consulting firm. We've noticed that, you know, people from Accenture haven't really fit in well at Vology. Why do you think that you're going to fit in here? You know, it's not the same. You're not going to, and this is why type of thing. So really just asking those types of questions of, you know, the environment that they come from versus where they're coming to.
I have a question on the unacceptable and acceptable. What if the candidate asks you about it, like instead of me saying, what are your child care arrangements? If they say, you know, I have 3 children at home and I need some time, I might need some time off for that, how do you respond to it?
So it has nothing to do with their children, but it has to do with the fact that they need time off. So you would flip that, you know, what schedule can you work?
Yeah.
That's it.
Completely leave the kids out of it.
Yeah.
What schedule can you work? Do you have any prior arrangements?
What schedule can you work?
Anything like that.
Basically, you know. For
lay
me,
the expectations down again. Hey,
yeah.
Like it's required. We have to have someone in here from 8 to 5. And that's kind of it. You leave it at that. And it's up to them to decide if they can make that work.
If they can make that work.
If they can't, then...
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, no, that does.
Yeah.
And if it's somebody that, you know, you really, again, leaving the kids out of it or whatever other prior personal obligations they may have that come up throughout the day, leave all that stuff out of it. If someone you really like and you really think could be a good, work with them on figuring out how we can make it flexible. Hey, maybe you can come in a little bit early, leave a little bit early sort of thing. Would that work for your schedule?
Yeah.
As opposed to...
Yeah, to Mike's point, I think that, yeah, if you're trying to make a hiring decision based on their scheduling arrangements, make sure that you know that you can accommodate them, you know. if the schedule is 8 to 5, but if you need to leave your house at 7 and be here at 7:30, would that help out? Would that, you know, would you consider this opportunity type of thing?
Yeah.
And just frame it up differently.
Okay.
Could I accommodate you?
Or just what hours could you work, right?
Yeah.
What other things, you know, what else comes up? I mean, what do you have to do during the day? What other things come about? What hours are ideal for you? And here's the deal, we ask that stuff. I always ask that stuff on the front end. I make sure.
That's a good point. So we don't pass them along. We don't bring them on site until most of those questions are answered. You know, all the logistics are covered, pay, commute, all of those are covered on the front end before we even bring them on site. We make sure that they're qualified on that side.
And I'll usually let you, like, still do the same, but we usually let you know, like, hey, I really like this person, but here's what we got going on.
Right, yeah.
They're used to working remote, or they're used to doing this, or they have this, that, and the other thing that they have to do. Is that something we can make work or not? And I won't schedule the candidate until we know that, yeah, we can work around that stuff, or there's room for flex on it. If it's a hard no, then I'm not going to bring the person in and then leave all of us with an awkward situation because we can't even hire the person.
Time with that.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right. So for the people on the phone, we're doing a little activity. I guess I should have emailed this out to you all.
Work with people on the phone, do you think that?
Yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of an activity. We're going to do an interview, a mock interview, an example interview. And there's going to be some things right with this interview, and there's going to be some things wrong with this interview, okay? There are 5 questions that we've created. The first question is, what was done correctly with this interview? Number 2 is, what did you observe about the hiring manager's body language and professionalism? Number 3 is, how could the skills questions be worded differently? Number 4 is, how many questions did you hear that could be discriminatory? And number 5 is, how could the closing be worded differently? So Mike is the candidate. I think if you move over, they might be able to see you. So Mike is the candidate, and I am the hiring manager.
Huh? Oh, yeah, I was going to sort of on video, right? Well, this light, my eyes are flattering. Oh, thank you. This is sweet. I get to be on the other side.
All right, here we go. Hi, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my name is Lisa. I'm the hiring manager for customer service. Did you need any water or anything before we get started?
Oh, I'm great. The person at the front desk, you know, got me water. I'm good to go.
Oh, good. So from what Mike the recruiter told me, you're currently in a customer service role, and you're looking to leave that role because you feel like there's no advancement. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, good. So my role here is I manage the customer service team. I have 3 supervisors beneath me and a team of 30 customer service agents. We run a shift of 24/7 and provide support to all of Ology's managed services customers. I've been with the company for 7 years now, and I've moved up quite a bit, and I'm super excited about being with the company and interviewing you here today. So I'm just going to go through your resume a little bit and then open it up for questions, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. So why are you interested in Ology?
So Ology it's a company that came on my radar a couple of years ago. I'm a big sports fan, so I had a Rays game and I saw a Ology sign there. I looked a little bit more into it and saw the growth that it's experiencing. So I was rated one of the best places to work in Tampa, and it has a lot of opportunities and roles that kind of fit the career path I want to do. So it seems like an ideal place for me.
Oh, great. So your resume says that you live in Spring Hill. That's going to be like an over an hour drive to get here. How are you going to make that work?
Oh, I already talked with Mike about that. I've driven it in rush hour, and it'll work for me. I don't have an issue with that at all.
Okay. Great. I mean, I have kids that I've got to rush home for as well. I've got kids, and you'll need to get home for kids as well, or do you have kids?
No, and I talked with Mike about the hours of the shift and everything like that. I'm okay with that.
Okay, all right, good. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Ideally, I'd like to progress through my career, potentially even be in your seat and maybe move into a management role or something like that.
Oh.
I haven't, it's tough to think that far in advance, but that's, I think, what I'd like to do.
Ooh, okay. I like your accent. Where were you born?
New York. Yep, Rochester, New York.
And can you tell me about your customer service skills?
I like to service the customer. I'm a customer-oriented, mindset. Customer's always right. I think it's important that you're very nice. You can build rapport with them and everything like that.
All right. Before you came in, I saw online that you'd been arrested a couple of years ago. Did you get that all cleared up?
Yeah, big mistake. Wasn't convicted on that one, so it's we're good.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Well, Mike, this has been a great interview. I think you nailed it. I actually think that you're gonna get the job. Thanks so much for coming in. I think that the recruiter is going to get back to you here shortly. Do you have any questions for me before we get out of here?
I think you covered it all. We're good to go.
All
so
right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. All right, guys. So what do you think went right during that interview?
You got offered water.
Offered water?
The only thing.
What else? No.
You talked about your role in the company too.
My role in the company?
In the beginning.
Yes, you made sure that he felt comfortable when he first got there before asking some very uncomfortable questions.
Yeah. So number 3, the third question, and for the purpose of this training, we cut this short. Your interview should last about an hour.
Not 5 minutes.
Not 5 minutes. So asking him about his commute. I noticed that he lives in Spring Hill. Who cares how long he's going to commute? We have people that commute over an hour. We have an employee that lives in Orlando. We don't talk to him about that. How do you frame that up? Are you able to work the required shift? We don't know if the address is accurate on his resume. We don't know if they're staying with a relative during the work week. Can they work the required shift? That's keeping it simple.
And again, we cover this, right? So that shouldn't even be a part of the interview, regardless. Because even there,
you would be amazed.
I felt awkward even answering it.
Yeah, you would be amazed at how many hiring managers, send me an email and say, oh my God, this person lives in Wesley Chapel. It's a no. I don't want to hear that.
It's a form of discrimination.
I was just going to say, we do not discriminate where a person lives, as long as they can get here by airplane, train, car, whatever. The next one was, about the kids. We already covered that. I already gave you the answer to the class. We don't ask them if they have kids. The way that you can frame something like that up is this position requires 30% travel. Are you able to travel for this role? That's it. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Yeah. This is a favorite question of some people. I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight, let alone where I want to be in the next 5 years. So another way that you can frame a question like this is, a question like this is good, but not like, where do you want to be in 5 years? How how are you going to make an impact in this role type of thing? Or how does this position relate to where you see yourself in 2 years? But 5 years is a little bit of a stretch. Or how does it line up with your short-term goals, short and long-term goals?
That's a good one. I just asked them, hey, what are some of your career goals and aspirations?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? I mean, walk me through that. Don't put a timeline on it. Don't put anything in it.
But how does the position fall into your short and long-term goals? Is pretty much a perfect way to tee it up. I like your accent. Where were you born? Come on, no, we don't care where they were born. If you are the first person interviewing the candidate, if you are ever in that position, you can ask, are you authorized to work in the United States? That's a legal question. Tell me about your customer service skills. We went over that. Another way to frame it up is a customer calls upset about their invoice that they just received. It's been billed incorrectly. The customer is screaming and blaming you. How do you handle that? So just turning it into, a more behavioral, or how do you ask a behavioral or situational question?
What do you like about customer service? What do you like about being in those types of jobs, sort of things? So you get someone's
passive. Why do they have passive?
Tell me about your customer service skills.
Yeah.
You can't answer that.
Don't put them in an awkward
Where do you think your
situation.
strengths are? Are they service? Are they
That's perfect. What do you like about it? Where do you see your strengths are? What are some of the things that you don't like about it? You start to get a little bit more of how that person thinks. You get more into that 90% of questions like that.
I saw online that you've been arrested a couple of years ago. Has this been cleared up? Absolutely not. Do not say that. If you are the very first person interviewing, Mike and I, we cover this on the front end. For this position, you'll need to consent to a drug and background. That's it, But you guys will not need to ask that question. Don't talk about drug and background. Don't even let it come up.
And don't Google the person. So we've run into a couple issues with this, right, where people are Googling someone and, whatever, and they don't even know if they have the right person. They don't even know what this person looks like, so they could be looking at different pictures, different what's, and it's a form of discrimination, right, because the person comes in and you already have preconceived bias that, they did this 5 years ago, so there's no way they could be a good fit for the company.
You guys would have already taken care of all
We take care of it.
We take care of that.
That's our job.
No. And here's the deal. I mean, we'll ask that question, and every now and then you're going to have someone that fails the background, or every now and then you're going to have someone that fails the drug test. All we could let them know is that, hey, it's required, and this is what's required. This position maybe has credit that's run, or this position has a 10-year instead of a 7-year, or there's a driving thing that's associated with it. Like, there's different backgrounds that are ran, and we'll let them know specifically what those are. We can't.
It's basically not your job to even talk about it.
Right.
So
that's already figured out.
Yeah. And then finally, don't tell them that they got the job. Don't do that,
Please don't do that.
Yeah, we have other candidates interviewing. Maybe, a week after they interview, we have to put the position on hold for some reason. So close it by just, letting them know what the next steps are going to be, that, Mike or myself will be in touch with them.
You did lean forward and we're interested.
Pardon me?
You leaned forward and we're interested.
Yeah, I had planned on doing something else and I missed it.
She was doing it when, we were going over this, and she was, looking at her phone or something when I was in the middle of that. And even right then and there, knowing that we're role-playing, knowing that
Mike was getting so frustrated.
Yeah,
we were role-playing this earlier, and I was, playing on my phone, and he was getting, really awkward feeling and frustrated. So the takeaway is pay attention to your candidate. Your candidate is your #1 focus. You want them to walk away feeling really good about themselves, feeling really good about Zology, walking away feeling like, if I don't get this job, it's okay, maybe later. Actually, I have a really great example. Jen, you'll love this. I had a guy that I interviewed yesterday. that met Jen and Barry at St. Pete College 4 years ago at a career fair. And yeah, I haven't told Jen this yet, but he met Jen and Barry at a career fair 4 years ago. And Barry was actually telling the audience that a degree isn't important, that certifications are, and this guy was already enrolled in school, so he needed to finish. But he had no experience. He interviewed with Jen that year. He didn't get the job. Now, 4 years later, he's interviewing with me. He has 4 years of experience, and he was so impressed with his interview with Jen that he's back 4 years later, and he's like, I have experience now, and my interview was so impressive at that old yucky building in Oldsmar that he wants to be here so bad. And it says a lot, and he's been following Vology for the last 4 years. And
that's awesome.
I know.
I was waiting for it.
I know, and he's like, I really want
to energy now to get to the next 6 months. I mean, that is just awesome.
Yeah, and so he's like, I really want to be here. You know, 4 years ago, I was in my first year at college, and I loved Barry's speech. I loved my interview with Jen. Everything was so impressive. Now I'm graduated, and I know the degree doesn't matter, but I've got 4 years of experience, and it was a really cool story. And I ran into that little room that Mike works in, and I was like, you got to hear this story. So, you know, people that walk away with a great experience, even though they don't get the job, it makes such a huge difference. And I'm sure that guy didn't just tell me. He's been telling people for 4 years because he's been following Vology for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty cool. Just to kind of wrap things up, after the candidate interviews with you, we're not finished. So I'm going to go through kind of start to finish the process. So workforce planning is the very beginning. So before a rec is even entered and posted on the World Wide Web, you got to make sure that it's approved, right? So approved means that we have the position budgeted for. After the position is budgeted for, we're going to get the job description together, and we're going to have a recruiting kickoff meeting. The recruiting kickoff meeting is to really qualify it and make sure that Mike and I know what makes a top performer. What do you guys want in your next employee? So really making sure that we're not wasting your time by bringing in the wrong candidate to interview. After that, we're gonna get working on it. We're gonna start sourcing candidates. And to Mike's point, sometimes we interview 50 candidates before you see that one candidate in your office to interview. After that, after we start sourcing candidates, we're interviewing them. We send them a skills survey, which is the tool that we use for references. If you guys aren't familiar with it, which you should be because the way that you got in here is from references. Skills survey is an electronic tool that we use to collect references before being hired. After we interview them, we're going to present the candidates to you. We can do this in a number of ways. Sometimes we'll just shoot you an email and say, we've got this great candidate that we want to introduce to you. Or sometimes we'll just walk straight to you. I think we work in a close enough capacity that it's easier just to show you how we feel verbally. And then we'll schedule and conduct interviews. We touched on this a little bit earlier this morning, but scheduling the interviews is an absolute nightmare. So if you have an interview on your calendar, do not cancel it. Keep it on your calendar. And then we have a feedback session to select or deselect the candidates. We are not going to get angry if you do not select any of the candidates that you've interviewed. In fact, it's fine because the cost of a bad hire is 30% of their salary. So it's extremely costly for our organization. And it takes up a lot of Mike's and I's time to backfill that position. So if you don't select any of the candidates that we presented to you, that's perfectly fine.
No, the only thing that we might do at that point is like, hey, let's sit down again and make sure that we're on the same page.
We might go back to kickoff.
Yeah, because I don't want to miss and keep missing and wasting your time.
Sure. And then we'll move to offer process. Make sure that we're all on the same page as far as, you know, what we're going to be offering the candidate. Select a start date. We start candidates every other week according to our payroll schedule. And then we'll move them to background check and drug screen. We will always keep you in the loop as to where we're at with that. No employee may start until both the background and the drug screen have cleared. And then we'll initiate the onboarding. Josh Lewis handles all of our new hire orientation and onboarding. So the handoff is there. She will contact the candidate and let them know what to expect on their first day. And she'll also probably reach out to the manager to coordinate, you know, first day and the handoff after new hire orientation. All right, so this is that. Some takeaways from training. The 3-interview rule, I don't know if we covered this too much, but we want to make sure that Vology has a reputation that it's not easy to get in here, right? So once they interview with Mike and I, they should expect to interview a couple more times. One of those interviews is going to be with the hiring manager, and then the next interview is probably going to be with one of your team members to assess that they're going to be a fit for your team, and then, you know, obviously the project or the technical assessment. Think of, you know, Florida State. Florida State is tough to get into. So, you know, we want to be that. We want to be Florida State. We want to be tough to get into. We want people knocking on our door trying to get in here. We want them sending me emails. Hey, I've been looking at Vology and I want to get in there. So think of the, you know, we want them to interview more than just a one and done. If they interview one time and you decide that you like them, I guarantee you it's probably not going to work out. You know, you haven't done a good job of interviewing them. Quality, not speed. The wrong hire, it's a proven fact that the wrong hire is going to damage our culture. Think about the people on your team that see attrition, the turnaround. It damages our culture, our morale, and it's very, very costly. Again, it's 30% of their salary. So it's our time, and, you know, the company sees that. Glassdoor sees that. You know, the community sees that. So we want to be very strategic on the people that we bring into the organization. When you're interviewing, think of our values. You know, is this person positive? Are they going to be able to grow in their role? And, you know, that's part of the culture. Are they going to fit into our culture? Asking open-ended questions, this is Mike's favorite. So, you know, again, product manager, tell me about how you manage products. That's not a great question. And set expectations early. So this all ties in to a bad hire. So if you're not setting the expectations early and talking them out of the role and let them talk you into it, it's gonna cause a bad hire. We are here for you guys. We'll interview with you. We'll sit there. We'll create interview guides for you. We'll do whatever we have to do to help you hire the right people for the job.
Like whatever, because if they don't get hired or if we hire the wrong person, then we're back working on this again.
Yeah.
I'd rather do all of that stuff on the front end and spend more time to ensure it's going to be right, and then we're good across the board.
Questions?
Oh, I asked mine as we went along, so.
Anyone?
Anyone have any questions on the phone?
I don't. You guys did a really great job. I thought this was really good, important content, and you, Lisa, and Mike just did a great job presenting in a transparent and real way that was engaging. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jen.